For years they heard it in the basement. Dragging sounds, scraping, like something heavy being pulled across concrete. And a wet, gargling noise, like someone drowning, but slower, more deliberate. Then one night, they finally saw it. A pale, naked humanoid, on all fours, skin stretched tight over protruding bones. Its limbs bent at wrong angles, too long, too thin. Its jaw hung open, unhinged, like a snake preparing to swallow prey. When it saw them watching, it didn't run forward. It scurried backward, like a spider, like a video playing in reverse. Then it was gone. This is the Midnight Registry.
In the space between midnight and dawn, when the world turns cold and the light is gone, something's watching from the tree-line edge. These are the stories they don't want you to know.
Before we get into tonight's story, I want to give credit where it is due. This encounter comes from a collection of crawler sightings shared online. Two friends living in a basement apartment in Utah experienced years of unexplained sounds before finally coming face to face with something that defied explanation. Crawlers, also called pale crawlers or rake-like entities, are a relatively modern cryptid phenomenon. Witnesses describe them as emaciated, pale humanoids that move in disturbing, unnatural ways. This is one of the most detailed crawler encounters on record. Full credit to the witness for sharing their experience. Now let's get into it. Two friends, Jake and Connor, shared a basement apartment in Utah. It wasn't fancy. Concrete floors, concrete walls, small windows near the ceiling that barely let in light. But it was cheap, and it was theirs. The apartment had been converted from storage space. The landlord had thrown up some drywall, added a bathroom and kitchenette, called it livable. There were still parts of the basement that were just basement, unfinished, dark corners and storage areas behind thin walls. And that's where the sounds came from the parts that weren't supposed to be accessible, from the darkness behind the walls. It started within the first week of moving in, late at night, after they'd gone to bed. A dragging sound, like something heavy being pulled across the concrete floor in the unfinished part of the basement. Scrape, pause, scrape, pause. Slow, deliberate, methodical. At first they thought it was pipes or the building settling. Maybe rats. But rats didn't make dragging sounds that loud. And then there were the other noises. A wet, gurgling sound, like someone gargling water or drowning. But slower, almost controlled. Like whatever was making the sound was doing it on purpose. Sound came every few nights, always late, always from the same area. Jack and Connor would lie in their beds listening, trying to identify the source. Sometimes it sounded close, right on the other side of the wall. Other times it seemed far away, deeper in the basement. The dragging, the gargling, always together. Like whatever was making those sounds was both moving and breathing, and maybe vocalizing. They never told their landlord. What would they say? There's something in the basement making weird noises. The landlord would think they were crazy, or trying to get out of their lease. So they kept quiet, and tried to ignore it. But you can only ignore something for so long. After months of hearing the sounds, Connor had had enough. We need to see what's making that noise, he said one night after another episode of dragging and gargling. Jake wasn't so sure. What if it's something we don't want to see? Then at least we'll know. Connor had a point. The not knowing was almost worse than knowing. The imagination fills in blanks with the worst possible scenarios. Better to know if it's just a raccoon or a homeless person or something explainable. Better than lying awake every night wondering. So they made a plan. Next time they heard the sound, they'd investigate. They'd find the source that put this mystery to rest. It was a decision they would both regret. A week later, the sound returned. Scrape, pause. Scrape, pause. Then that wet, gargling noise. Jake and Connor locked eyes across the room. This was it. Connor grabbed a flashlight. Jake grabbed his phone to record. They crept towards the wall where the sound was coming from. The unfinished section of the basement was accessible through a small door in their bedroom closet. Just a thin piece of plywood that had been screwed into the frame. Connor unscrewed it slowly, quietly. The sounds continued, closer now. Whatever was making them hadn't noticed the door opening, or it didn't care. Connor pulled the plywood away. Darkness. Complete darkness. He shined his flashlight into the space, and that's when they saw it. Pale. That was the first word that came to Jake's mind. Impossibly pale, like it had never seen sunlight, like it had been underground for years. The creature was humanoid, roughly human-shaped, but everything was wrong. It was naked, emaciated, skin stretched tight over bones, ribs visible, spine protruding. The limbs were too long, too thin, bent at angles that didn't make anatomical sense. It was on all fours, crouched low like an animal. But the proportions were all wrong for that posture. The arms reached too far forward, the legs bent backward at the knees. And its head was tilted at an unnatural angle, turned towards them, staring. Jake would never forget the face. The jaw hung open, unhinged like a snake about to swallow something whole. Inside he could see teeth, small and pointed, but too many of them, row after row of teeth. The eyes were black, completely black, almost with this glistening wetness to them. They didn't reflect the flashlight beam, they absorbed it, like looking into two holes, into nothing. The creature's mouth made that wet, gargling sound, slower now, more deliberate, like it was tasting the air. Jake and Connor stood frozen. Every instinct screamed at them to run, but they couldn't move. They were locked in place, staring at this thing that shouldn't exist. Then the creature moved, but it didn't move forward, it didn't lunge at them or retreat normally. It scurried backward, like a spider, like someone running a video in reverse. Its limbs moved in perfect coordination, but in the wrong direction. Knees bending the wrong way, arms pulling instead of pushing. It backed up into the darkness, faster than it should have been able to move. The gargling sound continued, growing fainter as it retreated. Within seconds it was gone, disappeared into the deeper parts of the basement. Connor slammed the plywood back over the opening, frantically screwed it back into place. His hands were shaking so badly he could barely hold the screwdriver. Jake just stood there, phone still recording, mouth open. Neither of them spoke. They wanted to know what was making them sounds. Now they knew. And they wished they didn't. Jake and Connor didn't sleep that night. They sat in the living area, lights on, backs against the wall, listening. The sounds didn't come back. Maybe the creature knew it had been seen. Maybe it was hiding deeper in the basement now. Or maybe it was just waiting. By morning they'd made a decision. They were leaving, lease or no lease, security deposit or not. They packed their essentials and were out within 3 days. Connor went to stay with family and Jake found a new place across town. Neither of them ever went back to that basement, and neither of them spoke about what they saw. Until years later, when they finally felt safe enough to share their story online, to warn others, to find out if anyone else had seen something similar. And the responses they got confirmed their worst fears. They weren't alone in what they saw. Crawlers, also called pale crawlers or rake entities or cave crawlers, are a relatively modern cryptid phenomenon. Reports began appearing online in the early 2000s. Forums, Reddit, cryptid databases. Witnesses described eerily similar creatures. Pale, hairless skin, emaciated bodies, long limbs moving on all fours, black eyes that reflect no light, unhinged jaws, too many teeth, and movement that's wrong. unnatural, often described as backwards or spider-like. The consistency across independent reports is disturbing. People who've never heard of crawlers describe identical creatures. Same pale skin, same black eyes, same backward movement. That suggests either A, a real undiscovered species with specific anatomical features, B, a shared psychological phenomenon, some primal fear manifesting in similar ways, C, something interdimensional or paranormal that appears consistent because it is consistent. Whatever the explanation, crawlers are being reported worldwide, in basements, caves, abandoned buildings, forests even. Always in darkness, always unexpected, and always deeply, fundamentally wrong. The backward movement is one of the most commonly reported and most disturbing features. It defies logic. Sometimes it defies biology. Moving backward on all fours requires completely different muscle coordination than moving forward. Your joints bend the wrong way, your weight distribution is wrong, you can't see where you're going. Yet crawlers do it effortlessly, quickly, like it's their natural mode of locomotion. Some witnesses describe it as scuttling like a crab. Others say like a spider backing away. One person compared it to watching a video play in reverse. The movement is coordinated and deliberate, not panicked or clumsy, but it is wrong. It is a practiced wrong, but wrong nonetheless. Like this is how they're supposed to move. And that raises the question, if they evolved or were designed to move backward, what are they running from? What's behind them that's worse than what's in front? Or are they not running at all? Are they retreating strategically, staying oriented towards prey while moving to safety? Like a predator that never takes its eyes off the target, even in retreat. The dragging sound makes sense now. That long, emaciated body, moving on all fours with limbs bent at wrong angles. Parts of it would scrape the concrete floor. Ribs, spine, joints. Scrape, pause. Scrape, pause. The creature moving through unfinished basement, crawling, hunting, patrolling. And that wet gargling sound, that unhinged jaw, that mouth full of teeth. Maybe it breathes that way, through its mouth with that loose, wet sound. Or maybe it is a vocalization, communication, calling to others of its kind, or warning intruders. Whatever the purpose, the sounds weren't random. They were the sounds of something alive, something moving through the darkness, something that might have been there for years, right on the other side of that wall. Crawlers are almost always encountered in underground or enclosed spaces, basements, caves, tunnels, abandoned buildings. Why? The pale skin suggests they're adapted to darkness, no pigmentation sensitive to light. The black eyes could be for night vision, or seeing in complete darkness. If they're a real biological entity, they'd need to stay underground to survive. Sunlight might burn them or blind them. Maybe they just prefer it down there. Maybe there's a whole network of tunnels and spaces we don't know about, connecting basements to sewers and natural cave systems. A hidden world beneath our cities, where these things move freely, hunt and breed, only occasionally crossing paths with humans. When we venture into their territory, when we open doors we shouldn't open, when we investigate sounds we should ignore. Jake and Connor's basement was connected to something larger, something older, and the creature they saw was just one of many, living in the spaces between our spaces, in the darkness beneath our feet. Jake and Connor lived in that basement for months before they saw it, but it had been there the whole time, crawling through the unfinished sections, making its sounds, dragging its emaciated body across concrete, gargling with that unhinged jaw. Just on the other side of the wall, feet away from where they slept. When they finally saw it, they ran. And perhaps they were smart to run, because that creature had been watching them too. They'd probably seen them through cracks in the wall, heard them talking. It knew they were there, and when they opened that door, it could have attacked. It could have lunged forward with those long limbs. But it didn't. It backed away, scurried into the darkness. Maybe because it was scared. Or maybe because it wasn't hungry yet. Either way, Jake and Connor got lucky. They saw it and they escaped. But somewhere in Utah, that basement apartment still exists. And something still lives in the unfinished sections, making its sounds in the darkness, waiting for the tenants who don't know any better. If you ever rent a basement apartment, and you hear dragging sounds at night, don't investigate. Don't open that door. Just leave. Some mysteries are better left unsolved. The backward movement is what gets me. I've reviewed dozens of caller reports, different witnesses, different locations, even different years. And they all describe the same thing, backward scuttling movement. That's not misidentification. That's a consistent anatomical feature. Which means either we're dealing with a real biological entity that's evolved this trait, or we're dealing with something that mimics biology, but operates on different rules. The years of sounds before visual contact suggest the creature was aware of its witnesses long before they were aware of it. Patient, observing, possibly intelligent. The retreat, when discovered, could indicate fear or strategy. Many predators retreat to reassess when their presence is detected. What troubles me, that basement was occupied before Jake and Connor, and it was likely occupied after they left. How many people have heard those sounds? How many have seen it and not reported it? More importantly, how many didn't get the chance to leave? Sleep well.
Welcome to the Midnight Registry, where the darkness keeps its secrets. Welcome to the Midnight Registry.